DMDongo here with another review from the DM's Guild. This time we're looking at Those Lost in Madness by MadDogOzie, on sale for $2.95. If you add tentacles to a Barbarian, does it make it better or worse? Those Lost in Madness, what is this? Well, this is 4 class options influenced by the Far Realm. You have a Barbarian, you have a Cleric, you have a Druid, and you have a Rogue. So, let's get started. We have Barbarian, Path of the Meat Shaper. It's essentially a body augmentation Barbarian, though of the Eldritch variety, so rather than getting a nice piercing or tattoo, we are talking about changing your arms out for tentacles, you know, the usual thing. At levels 3, 6, and 10, you gain a deformation, which are detailed later, but include things like an amorphous body, allowing you to avoid fall damage and engulf your enemies, or growing eyes all over your body, which grant the ability to paralyze your foes. The entire subclass is well themed, and the mechanical features are quite interesting, if a bit unnerving, for your fellow party members. Whoever this Barbarian is, it's very unlikely they're going to be the party face after growing eyes and mouths in strange places. Moving right along to the Cleric domain, Cosmic domain specifically. You kind of expected this one. Worshippers of Great Old Ones, Elder Evils, or even the Vile Stars of Adar or Akamar count this among their domains. Lurking Insanity is an interesting skill. Granting skill proficiencies at a cost is quite nice thematically. So you gain you gain proficiency in a skill that you didn't have before, but you subtract a d4 from any rolls that you potentially make. It makes it interesting in terms of which ones you'll choose, because if you choose the wrong one, well, you kind of didn't end up where you wanted to be, as it were. But it is interesting from that perspective. And Cleric Touch is a really interesting theme, and I'm seeing a kind of a theme with this subclass. The powers are great, but come at huge cost. First, the way this ability works, you give disadvantage on all saving throws and advantage to all attacks against the creature. It's really powerful, however, but when you do this, the creature gets to do an attack against you as a result. So, first thing that happens, you deal 2d6 psychic damage, and it's like then the target is forced to make its reaction to attack you, automatically with nothing else to do. Afterward, the target suffers disadvantage on all saving throws, and attacks against it are made with advantage. And the effect lasts until the start of your next turn. So it's a kind of a high-risk, high-reward ability. They could potentially kill you with the reaction attack. Next, we move on to the Druid Circle of the Blot. Mucus is everywhere on this one. And one of their starting abilities is, rather than just turn into basic beasts, you can turn into aberrations. And I really like this. It's really cool and thematic. It fits the theme of the entire supplement as a whole. And the idea of turning into aberrations, especially if you have books like Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and your DM allows these things, there are a lot of really cool low CR aberrations in there that have some really interesting and unique abilities and unique flair to them that I think a lot of these druids will really like. A lot of their abilities are based around the Harbinger of Wither ability to create mucus pools. One of them stuns creatures caught within the stuff. Another causes the mucuses to explode, and anything killed by this explosion becomes an immediate crawler, which attacks anything near it. It's a lot of really like set up and then do something with it abilities. Like a lot of stuff around that is kind of like building things up and doing things later. The last one is the Far Lurker. It's a rogue. The theme of attacks with downsense continue here. Void Conduit is an ability which I really, really love. You slowly build up a charge of d4s every time you land a sneak attack, finally releasing them in a torrent of damage. So basically, once you've done 3 successful sneak attacks, the 4th attack you can release all of the stored d4s. Now this d4 goes up to d6 and then d8 at later levels, so it does get stronger as you progress. But essentially, you use these d4s for a couple of other things. You can also use them as part of your Shifting Mark, which is another ability they get. You expend one of those d4s, hit a creature with a ranged attack. Once you've done so, they are marked. And the next time their turn ends, not your turn, their turn, you can teleport them to you as long as they're within 60 feet. which is a really interesting idea. The next thing you have is Praying Eye, which allows the rogue to find out some rather useful information about a creature, namely how armored the creature is, their AC, or how much fight they have left in them, their HP. Rather useful and rather unique, but it can be very important to know how hard something is to hit, whether it's going for a saving throw ability or an attack roll. Finally, they have the ability called Far Realm Calling, which allows the rogue to temporarily step into the Far Realm. Another one of these abilities where a high-risk, high-reward strategy is in play. Stepping into the Far Realm grants you those D4s from Void Conduit. It grants 5 of them, however, at a cost. The cost is interesting. Essentially, there is a table you roll on after coming back from the Far Realm that can cause all kinds of effects. Simple things like your movement speed is reduced by 10 feet, or you could deal maximum damage to every melee attack. However, every attack made within 5 feet of you would also deal maximum damage. So like I said, high risk, high reward. Now, what did I like about this? I liked a lot of things about it. One, I love the formatting. I love the black background with the yellow text. It was incredibly easy to read. Actually a lot easier to read than any of the normal D&D supplements I get. The manila background with the black text, I find sometimes my eyes go a little cross. With this, it was actually really simple to read. It almost feels like a dark mode or a night mode for my D&D modules. I really wish a lot of other ones would do something like this. But it really fits thematically well with this. It's kind of odd and weird. And if you think about that kind of thing with Far Realm, it works really well. Speaking of theming and art, the art that's present in here is really, really nice, really well done. Particularly, I love the Barbarian art that they found. Really, really well done. That fits perfectly. Clearly a Barbarian covered in eyes. It's absolutely perfect. Fits thematically really well done there. The rest of the art is really lovely. Gives you that really good sense of this is a place beyond the stars. This is a place of madness and danger. Gives that right feeling overall. The other thing I want to mention is that every subclass comes with a section at the end of it that you see in some of the Xanathar's book. Kind of an idea of what this subclass is that makes them different. What is something about them that changes their appearance, or maybe changes what their abilities look like, or gives them some unique flair that sets them apart from other classes and other subclasses. Things like quirks that the far lurker gets. It can be something as simple as you change your emotions constantly and people think you are insane. But maybe it's something more complex where you just forget what day it is because you've been in the Far Realm too long, it messed with your head. But there are other things like, what does your holy symbol look like? Is it a bag of nails you collect from every enemy? Or is it something like a black polyhedral that you don't know how many sides it's got on it? It's a lot of really interesting things to add to addition to roleplay. And I love that about that. It gives it a good sense of depth for every single subclass. Now, as for the specific subclass now, I have 2 favorites. Path of the Meat Shaper is one of them. And I don't normally play Barbarian, so this is a weird one for me to actually really think, this is my favorite. I would have, normally I would have played Druids, I play Paladins, I play Clerics, I play Wizards. I tend to play caster classes, but this one spoke to me for some reason. And I think it's because there's a lot of stuff around customization here. There are 7 deformations, and you only get to choose 3 of them. So it means that Path of the Meat Shaper is one of those interesting classes where no 2 are quite the same. Whereas things like fighters and certain wizard subclasses, they're pretty much the same down the road in terms of what they're capable of and what they can do. Like, yes, wizards have lots of subclasses, same thing with sorcerer and all the other ones. But if you have 2 of them, they're probably going to be fairly identical in what they're capable of. Whereas this one doesn't feel that way. It feels like you could have 2 very different playstyles in the way they operate. And it would be really interesting to see how they work out. Things like Gibbering Mouths, which allow you to gain adding D6s to wisdom and intelligence checks, I can see a really interesting barbarian archetype there, like a sage barbarian, wise and intelligent, while at the same time being this torrent of rage and damage. If you got the stat rolls for it, it'd be interesting to kind of see how that played out. My other favorite one is the Far Lurker. And the Far Lurker I really like for the kind of risk-reward system in there. The Void Conduit I really like. I like building up the damage and waiting to see when I can spike it at just the right time to do the maximum lethality. Maybe waiting until something's paralyzed or in some way incapacitated so I can guarantee that critical hit. And I also really love Far Realm Calling. That's like that high risk, high reward strategy I really love to see in certain subclasses. It makes it interesting to kind of play around, as it were. Right, now what didn't I like about this supplement? Well, there's not a whole lot I didn't like. I liked most of it, but I do want to kind of point out a couple of things. First, I want to point out that Path of the Meat Shaper, one of the abilities that they've got might be a little strong, the Deformations. Specifically Eyes of Weird Hunger. As a bonus action, you can focus your extra eyes on one creature, and the target makes a wisdom saving throw against you, your deformation save DC, which can be quite high given it's 8 plus your constitution plus your proficiency bonus. So some really strong barbarians could have 15 at level 1. On a failed save, the creature becomes paralyzed. Now, that paralyzation is really strong because partially there's a couple of reasons. Other things that paralyze are things like Hold Person. Hold Person only works on humanoids. It's a person. And the stronger spells that work on this are things like Hold Creature or Hold Monster. Hold Monster is the stronger version, which works on nearly anything that can be paralyzed. Then you're already as strong as Hold Monster, which is a much higher level spell. So Hold Person is a second level spell. Now obviously none of this works on creatures that don't rely on sight, so it is restricted in that way, but it also is a bonus action, and then you can immediately attack it for a free critical. I feel like there's two things that potentially could happen here in order to restore a little bit of balance here to make it feel more in line with existing abilities. Either it uses a resource, or the other thing it probably needs to do is to be more restrictive on what it can potentially affect, and potentially even make it an action rather than a bonus action, because paralyzing creatures is really, really strong in general. So those are my 3 kind of like suggestions for that specific ability. The other ability I want to mention is Far Realm Calling from the Far Lurker. The reason I want to mention this one is because that ability specifically says that you gain 5 of the Void Conduit dice. Now, Void Conduit itself says that you can only hold up to 3. Now, I know normally we say, well, specific rules overlord generic ones, but these are 2 specific rules in like bashing against each other's heads. Now, I think what probably happened is that Void Conduit was originally supposed to increase the amount of die you could potentially store, and eventually be able to go up to 5. And then maybe that Far Realm Calling was written afterwards, and it didn't get retroactively done. Or perhaps maybe it just means that you have up to 5 right now because of the nature of this ability. But I think it needs to be more clear in that regard if it's going to mean that, as it were. Finally, I want to point out the Far Realm effects. I would have loved to see more of these, just for a bit more variance in it. There's only 10. I'd have loved to see something like a Wild Magic Sorcerer table of D100, 100 different things that could potentially happen, just to have something like really, like, because the Far Realm is really weird. I would love to see some like just really weird bonkers things. Right, my final thoughts on Those Lost in Madness. Now, overall, I really love this. I love the idea of it. I love the theming of it. I love the art in it. I love the formatting of it. I love the way it's structured. I love everything about it except for a couple of little niggles here and there around balance, particularly around the Barbarian path, and the weirdness around the rogue, just because I wasn't sure it was a rogue at first, and 2 because I think it's like the final ability Far Realm Calling is a little funny. But if you have 4 subclasses and you only manage to overtune one ability out of, I think it was like 25-ish total across the entire set, you've done pretty well here. So I think on the whole, I'm going to rate it 4.5 out of 5, just because of the balance issue around the Barbarian and because of the weirdness around the Rogue. So only half a point. Fix those 2 issues and you've got easily a 5 out of 5 supplement. For $2.95, you're getting 4 really great, well-tuned subclasses, minus the Barbarian's 1 ability. And I think a good DM would be able to adjust that fairly quickly. I would love to see it fixed in the supplement itself, but thank you. This has been DM Dongo. Please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Please use my affiliate code, which will be down below, which will link you directly to those Lost in Madness. And thank you again, and peace out.